That's going to winnow out anything that might be interesting or substance. But let's begin. We know the bar that's been set up for each to pass. Biden has to not look old and not have a senior moment. Go.
Making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the with the COVID. With dealing with everything we have to do with. Look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden.
Welcome back, Couch Surfers, and welcome back, Nelson Bowyer.
Clickety-clack, we are back.
Man, what a week or two it has been. The late-night television shows, Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, and others are having an absolute field day.
Yeah, let me tell you something.
But it's not a laughing matter, is it?
No, it is not. And I have covered politics, looked at politics, been fascinated by politics since I was in second grade. I mean, my dream was to meet Governor Wilder of Virginia. I'm a freak. I'm an addict. And this has been the most important, most compelling, most impactful, and most interesting 2 weeks in American politics that I can think of. I can't think of a corollary. I can't think of any.
Well, it's interesting you say that because I was just doing a little bit of my own research before you got here, and I came across this little nugget.
Joe Biden is a dummy. I think he's the weakest mentally. And I like running against people that are weak mentally. When a man has to mention my name 76 times in a speech, that means he's in trouble. Now, I have to tell you, he's a different guy. He looks different than he used to. He acts different than he used to. He's even slower than he used to be.
That was President Donald J. Trump about 5 years ago commenting on then sprite 76-year-old Joe Biden. So to me, it's Groundhog's Day all over. But Nelson, you say it's unprecedented. You hadn't seen anything like this. I will agree with you that the stakes are probably higher now. Donald Trump has a much better, more well-oiled political machine going into 2024, 2025. And I'm with you, man. I'm absolutely glued to the television day and night, awaiting, anticipating with bated breath the news that Joe Biden will either A, become accepted by Washington and his surrogates and donors, or B, he and his family will make that difficult decision that Nixon had to make before and step down.
I don't anticipate President Biden leaving the presidency, nor do I think he should.
But stepping away from the race.
We are seriously, as a nation, as a political party, if you are a Democrat, contemplating removing the top of our ticket with less than 1 month to go before our convention.
That is where we are. Thought, isn't it?
That is what is happening.
Yeah.
And momentum toward that end appears to be building by the minute.
Let me ask you, how difficult is it for anyone with political power, let alone the President of the United States, let alone someone who's been, in public office for 50 plus years like Joe Biden, to step away from that kind of power? Isn't power an aphrodisiac? Didn't one of the presidents say absolute power corrupts absolutely? And I'm not suggesting Biden is corrupt, don't get me wrong, but I am suggesting that he could be, as some of the pundits are saying, blinded by this ego, blinded by his just love affair with public office? I think
you would probably know, and maybe in a future episode we can put power on the couch. I think you would probably know more about what power does,
how it
the
motivates
narcissism inherent in getting it.
Yeah.
However, what I would say is that President Biden right now is diminished greatly in terms of his ability to shape events. And so he might feel powerful, and he has the most powerful office in the world. But I think that he is blinded to the very real possibility of a loss. Not real possibility, the likelihood of a loss.
Well, let's take a big breath and a little break, get our thoughts together, and on the other side, we'll come back and hit this thing running. You're listening to Put 'em on the Couch, our 59th episode, Couch Surfers. I'm Jason McCoy. Your co-host, Nelson Bowyer, joins me, and we'll be right back.
I think it's a little late for him to step down at this point. I was very surprised when I saw the debate. I didn't realize the condition he was in. Now I know he's saying that he just had a bad week when he was overseas and he didn't get enough rest. I don't know if I believe that.
I do not think that Joe Biden is the best person to be running in this election. I don't know who that person is. I don't think that he can win against Donald Trump, and I am worried about the state of our country with Donald Trump as our president.
Welcome back, Couch Surfers. Jason McCoy alongside Nelson Bowyer. We are the cast of Put 'em on the Couch, here today to talk about this political purgatory that we find ourselves, or at least Joe Biden finds himself in. We are obviously talking about what everybody is talking about, including our friends and foes across the pond. You know, Nelson, it was the 75th year of the UN this week, and it was supposed to be a jolly affair for President Joe Biden.
You mean NATO?
NATO,
Yeah.
excuse me, NATO. I told you I'm not very good with politics and government, and which is why we've got Nelson back in the studio today. He's our poli-sci history man, and all I can do is prognosticate about the inner workings of the mind and what
Yeah,
might
but why don't we start
motivate
there?
people.
Let's talk about aging.
Yeah, I think we should. But let me just remind people, if you've been away from, I guess, life the last 2 weeks,
under a rock.
you probably missed President Biden's unprecedented early debate with President Donald Trump. It was supposed to be a open and shut deal. Biden was going to come in after being well prepped, right, Nelson, a week or more, inside an Air Force airplane hangar. This thing was apparently designed to look like the studio of CNN. Anyway, they had a cardboard cutout of Trump, as they will do, and they prepped him and prepped him and prepped him. He came in, and you heard at the top of the show pretty much his opening remarks, and they were, let me just say this as nicely as possible, unintelligible.
Horrifying, I think, is what you were trying to get at.
Well, Carl Bernstein, I don't know if you know him.
Yeah, sure,
political
yeah.
pun, called the debate a horror show. Stiff, shuffling. I think most Americans were aghast at that performance. Biden and his family certainly were at Camp David shortly after the debate. They went there for, ostensibly, you have to imagine, what had been planned as rest and relaxation, right?
And
get
maybe
on the golf
celebration,
cart,
yeah.
Get on the golf cart, work on that swing so he could come back and take Trump,
Beat Trump
on the links. But it was a war retreat of sorts, wasn't it? Many excuses were made. He had trouble with his stutter, I heard. He's jet lagged after a long week of travel. Said he didn't go to bed some of those days until 2 a.m. Did his makeup wash him out? I mean, those hot lights, you know, you've been in the political sphere for a while. You've had to do some interviews on camera. Those lights can be hot. They can wash you out, right?
I have never worn makeup. Never.
Maybe Biden should have. I even heard he was over-prepared. And there is a psychological phenomenon of just being over-prepared, and maybe because you've prepared yourself so well, you expect that you're going to do like 110%. And then if you're falling anywhere close to short, you start to get nervous. It stresses you, right? It stresses you. And this is probably for perfectionistic personalities more than anything. I also heard that, well, he is slipping, that mentally he's in decline, that Trump is right. He's sleepy, he's slow, maybe he's even senile. But again, as I mentioned earlier, we've played that drumbeat before. Joe Biden, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't already noticed, is old. And he's been old for a while, and he's not getting any younger. Now, the question I have, Nelson, is aging, or should age be a proxy for how productive, how good, how effective, how much mental fortitude someone has?
No, of course not.
You know,
I don't think so.
When we turn to geriatric scientists, they certainly agree with both of us. They say, look, you can't use age, chronological age, as a way of determining what's going on with someone biologically. I mean, that's obvious to anyone who's ever looked at you, right, Nelson? I mean, this guy looks, 20, 22 years old?
I do.
But biologically, you know he's much older, much wiser, much more experienced. Just listen to this guy, man. Don't let his his appearance,
voice.
or his voice
12-year-old voice.
belie him. He is way and above older biologically when it comes to his wisdom, his experience. Look, all jokes aside, Joe Biden is wise. I mean, if you look at the way neuropsychologists who study wisdom, like Ekanon Goldberg, the late great neuroscientist from New York University, defines wisdom. He says, look, it's basically the result of experience. And oddly enough, intelligence really doesn't play into wisdom as much as empathy or compassion does. Yeah. Self-reflection, being able to surround yourself with people that can help push you to make better decisions, right?
So from
recognizing that you're not always right. In other words, shouldn't we, instead of looking at chronological age as a proxy, wouldn't we be better served as a people who want to preserve democracy to do what Alan Lightman has said? This guy, remember, was one of the only big name pundits to come out, pollsters, pundits, whatever he was, to come out and say Trump's going to win. I mean, he's predicted the last 5 presidential elections. I know Nate Silver of the 538 blog gets a lot of credit for being such a Nostradamus when it comes to political prognostication, but Alan Lightman has been on this the last 5 elections, and he said, you might want to consider questions such as, what is the candidate's vision for the future? We know Joe Biden has a very appealing vision for the future. We know it's popular. Well, we know that he wants to preserve democracy first and foremost. He wants to help continue to ease up this saddling burden of debt that American kids in particular face from being lended predatory amounts of money at questionable interest rates. He wants to do something about the border, although the Republicans oftentimes pretend like they do too, but then they purposely get in his way whenever he puts forth bipartisan ideas. What is their plan for getting there? He does have a plan if we will give him 4 more years. Are they trustworthy? I mean, I don't know that Joe Biden has outright lied, certainly not in the sort of outrageous way Donald Trump has and continues to do it every single time he opens his mouth. Next, and I think this is where politics might come into play a little more, where does their monetary support come from? Now, I have heard that there are donors that are concerned right now. And if donors are concerned, that's probably a bigger political issue than almost anything else, because without the money, you don't have the war chest. You can't really win the presidency, most likely. And finally, is their vision what America needs right now? Nelson, I don't want to be ageist. I mean, I think that's one of the final frontiers when it comes to the isms that still seems to be acceptable. You know, a recent survey from one of those like Fast Company or tech agencies that organized the survey asked several hundred HR people, CEOs from companies, how old is too old to hire someone in a position of, authority, a meaningful position? Do you know that 33% of them said 58 is the cutoff? 58. That's frightening when you consider that, at least 1 in 4 Americans are 65 or older right now. And it's projected that by 2060, there'll be more people over age 65 than there are under age 5. Sure. There's also suggestions that by the next century, the average life expectancy will be closer to 100 than it is 80, which is about where it is now. So I don't want to be ageist, but I do recognize that even bringing up the word ageist and worrying about discrimination and stereotyping and telling people that they can't do it because they're old does miss a bigger point.
Yeah.
I'm a psychology instructor by training. I'm a humanist. I'm tolerant. I want what's best for people. I love the kumbaya stuff. I'll admit it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sad when I hear that someone wants to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I think those are noble, laudable things to sort of aspire to in companies, at institutions, in your own neighborhood. However, I know what Nelson's going to say. Politically speaking, there's only one thing that we need to think about. And what is that, Nelson?
I mean, for me, I'm a partisan, and I'm also a person and a human being. And the only thing that matters is beating Donald Trump.
Yeah, I'm a partisan as well, but I don't necessarily need to tell you that I'm a Democratic, liberal, progressive, or libertarian partisan. I'm a partisan for democracy. Even if it's flawed, even if it's shaky, even if we haven't gotten to what we've aspired to and it's a work in progress, I'm for that still.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what you're saying is that
Look,
you are for democracy, first and foremost.
If you talk about ageism in the same context of something like racism or misogyny, you're making a mistake.
How so?
Well, because if I tell you a black person or a Hispanic person or an Asian person is more or less capable of doing something because of their race, you are a fool.
Yeah.
Genetically,
no difference.
There's absolutely no. You know that.
Yeah.
We all know that. Okay.
But if I say Joe Biden is not good because of his age,
it's not ageism to point out concerns about people aging because people age.
I think that's where I need to be.
Sundown.
I want to be careful. I want to be
things.
careful. So aging, according to developmental psychologists, geriatric researchers, Alzheimer's researchers, anyone who looks at the aging process, they're going to argue aging is a normal process whereby when you measure certain things, like the speed at which you can remember a name, right? Or the speed at which you can use or ascertain short-term memories, the speed at which you can do certain cognitive tasks, they do tend to slow on tests. But those kinds of speed tests show declines starting at guess what age?
Probably 40.
20.
Sure.
Then 30, a little more, and then 40.
I'm not
So the
surprised.
fact that Joe Biden is showing signs of aging is nothing to be alarmed about, nothing to be nervous about.
Okay, wait.
In fact, that feeds into the whole.
Let's cut through the noise.
Cut through it. So
I got to ask you a question.
What is the term?
What? Now, I'm not talking about aging. I'm saying to you, from a perspective of a viewer, somebody who watches these things, somebody who watches President Biden.
Yeah.
What sign should I be looking for to know if somebody is slipping? As a voter, what do I need to look for? Because you might say it's impossible to know as a viewer, somebody distant, and that is a wholly unsatisfying political answer.
But unfortunately,
that's the one you're going with.
If you're to ask me what should voters be looking for, if they want to be intellectually honest, if they really do care about democracy, I think Alan Lightman's comments are instructive. What is the candidate's vision for the future? What is the plan to get there?
Biden can't articulate that.
That's a different story, whether he can articulate it or communicate it. He has surrogates, he has aides, he has a vice president. Look, I think we need to quit asking maybe Biden questions about age and his doctors questions about age and start asking the whole machine about questions related to the VP choices. I mean, I think that's a problem we have right now as well. And
Jason, if you keep up with Biden as the nominee, all you're going to do for the next 4 months is answer questions about aging and age. That's it.
But
that's what the campaign is going to be about.
I would be doing a disservice to my listeners if, as an educator, if as someone who understands the brain somewhat, as someone who spent 30 years almost studying neuroscience and psychology, if I didn't point out that what the average person is seeing in Biden so far, right, can be explained very clearly and easily as an aging process. There is nothing there. Now,
when you're explaining in politics, you're losing.
Yeah, I understand that. But you asked me what I thought, and I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention, if you look at Joe Biden slipping, if you look at Joe Biden being stiff, if you look at Joe Biden seeming lost for a second or two, and you say to yourself, that's a sign that he's senile, he's deteriorated, he's ready for the old folks' home, you're making a grave mistake. And I think that kind of stereotyping is dangerous, not just in this race, but in general, particularly when you consider ageism is a real thing. People start to feel like their age is being used to discriminate against them as early as their late 30s, early 40s. So this is not something we just should sit back idly and go, oh, it's okay since it's politics. Now, having said that, I want you to know that with age, again, does come wisdom, right? You can't plan for wisdom. You can't get wisdom from being young. Donald Trump is old. He should have wisdom, but he doesn't, because that implies that you've accumulated knowledge and you've learned lessons and you've learned from mistakes over time. This guy is an absolute parasitic, narcissistic, overblown braggart.
But nobody is debating that. Nobody is debating that.
Yeah,
nobody is saying Biden is worse than Trump.
But unfortunately, we have a binary choice right now.
It is an unappealing choice.
It may be, but that's the choice the voters went with 16 million people voted in the Democratic primary, 14 million of them.
That is a joke.
What do you mean?
16 million people voted in the Democratic primary, but there was no primary. There was no choice.
No, there must have been a choice because
choice.
2 million of them voted for other candidates. Joe Biden was the leading candidate by far. By the way, this wasn't anything new. We didn't spring Joe Biden on him this time around. There were questions about his age 4 years ago. You heard me play that clip.
If elected, you would be the oldest president in American history.
But I'm in good shape.
78 years old, 82 after 4 years. Donald Trump says you have dementia, and it's getting worse.
Hey, the same guy who thought that the 9/11 attack was a 7/11 attack, he's talking about dementia?
So this isn't anything new. What I'm thinking is people are having buyer's remorse. People are already sort of throwing in the towel and saying, Trump's going to beat us. The sky's falling. We're seeing some of these polls suggesting, particularly in some of these battleground states, that Biden is losing momentum and that Trump is sort of taking more and more of the lead. I will sort of point out, in 2019, 2018, going into the 2020 election, many, many people said Trump is going to lose, including the Trump organization itself. His operatives, all the people working for him, thought he was going to lose. This guy didn't even have anybody selected for his transition. Jared went into the White House and asked, hey, what are we going to do with all these people? Do they get to stay here? Do we have to replace any of them? No, these guys didn't take this seriously.
I understand.
And yes,
that.
there were some polls that
that
suggested that Trump was closer to winning than even Trump was giving himself credit
So that's
for.
what we're betting on? Is that the polls are wrong? Is that what we're doing?
Well, look, that seems to be what is motivating most people to
the last two
all
presidential
of a sudden,
elections, both the polls underestimated Trump's strength.
Sure, but here's the thing.
By a big number.
For the last 2 weeks, people have been going nuts, right? Saying that the sky is falling.
Is Joe Biden right when he says he's listening to the voters, not to the elites?
Yeah, because guess what? They vote. So, yeah, I'm listening to the voters. And look, this is just a pathetic conversation. We've taken one event and we've turned it now into a week and a half to 2 weeks of noise. So you've made the bad thing worse, Democrats, by the way you've responded to it publicly, lashing out against the president and shifting the argument away from the real threat who's standing opposite Joe Biden.
It's kind of interesting to me that in the past, Biden showed the same sort of gaffes. He showed the similar sort of stiffness. Yeah, I mean,
no. Go back and watch the 2020.
I have. I've been watching a bunch of these.
The 2020 debate was totally different.
Look, so was the State of the Union address just a couple of months ago. People said, he's back, baby. I could sit here and take up our airtime today and play some of those clips, some of those greatest clips. In fact,
look,
I just heard some pretty good clips from the...
Nothing is going to unring the bell that was rung when 50 million Americans tuned in. True or false? That was the single most high-profile moment of the campaign.
It was close.
It was a disastrous performance.
Yep.
Nobody can get it out of their mind.
No.
Nobody can stop focusing on it. And the president is in deep, deep trouble.
Yep.
I don't know that he can't win. I do know that another candidate has a far better chance of defeating Donald Trump.
And when we come back after this break, we'll talk a little bit about that and try to unpack that claim that Nelson just made.
I mean, David Jolly, I guess I come back to you with the question of what now distinguishes the two parties when you've got Republicans who've long said something very different about Donald Trump in private than they do in public, right? Sure. You now have the same thing happening in the Democratic Party.
Among elected officials. And I think this is very important because just as we would suggest that top Democrats might be gaslighting, and I use that term about the White House staff in the first 72 hours after the debate. I remain unsettled by what I saw, but I accept the reality that Joe Biden has said, trust me, I can do this, and he made the decision to stay in. And so now it's a contrast. And so this is where I would suggest the parties are different. If that donor that was quoted or that anonymous elected official or that Democratic leader who is quoted saying, we have to do something, we have to pull the plug on Biden, you're undermining democracy because you're invalidating 14 million votes of Democrats across the country that handed Joe Biden the nomination. There were 16 million Democrats that participated in the Democratic primary to choose their nominee. Over 14 million chose Joe Biden. 2 million chose somebody else. And the notion that members of Congress or a machine or a donor is going to come in and say, hey, voters, no, 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 no. You don't really control the party. We do. It's the most Republican thing of all that Democrats could do in this moment. And that's where they would ultimately fail the test about democracy. This isn't easy. It's not good. The Democratic voters nominated Joe Biden. Joe Biden said he's staying in. So now your choice is between Biden and Trump. That's it.
Thanks again for joining us, Couch Surfers. If you're just now tuning in, I'm Jason McCoy alongside my longtime friend, confidant, co-host, and better half, Nelson Bowyer. We are the cast to Put Him on the Couch today. We're talking about this presidential race for 2024. Could the stakes be greater, Nelson? On the left, you have Joe Biden supporters and supporters of democracy saying, look, we've got a tyrant, a would-be fascist dictator waiting in the wings to be reelected so that he can sort of actualize the promise that he couldn't quite live up to the first time around. And on the right, we've got people saying, oh, you've just got a senile old man. It's buyer's remorse. You're just pissed off that he is not smarter. He's not better than Donald Trump. His policies suck. He's got a terrible vice president. In fact, you Democrats have picked weak and ineffectual vice presidents the last couple times around. And now you don't know what to do, so you got to keep saying that, oh, he wants to destroy democracy. He wants to destroy democracy. Shut the fuck up and let the people's will be what it will. Nelson, you like democracy. I like democracy. What do you say to those that say, look, Joe Biden was elected the 46th president of the United States. Joe Biden, whether he had any reasonable opposition candidates in the primaries this last time around or not, got 14 of the 16 million Democratic voters.
Million votes. You're cracking me up with that one.
Help me here.
You're cracking me up with that one.
Help me here. Don't we have to ride with Biden? Don't we have to leave the dance with who we came with? Listen, because at the end of the day, I know there's some pundits and there's machinery in play right now, and there's prognosticators and there's critics, and there's probably even some family members who are saying, I want him out, I want him out, I want him out. But there's no one that can get him out except himself. Isn't that true?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this decision has to come down to the president.
He's
but
got
here's
the
the
delegates.
thing. This is what you're not understanding, and this is what most people don't understand about presidential campaigns or campaigns in general. They're not about an answer to a question. They're not about who has better health care policy. Largely, people vote based on who they like.
Who they like,
and
who feels right.
campaigns are thematic.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, they're thematic.
Because what it comes down to is the question. Not the answer, but the question. If we are talking on Election Day and leading up to the Election Day and every day between now and Election Day about Joe Biden's age, the border, if we're talking about inflation, if we're talking about these
student
things,
loan debt recovery.
if we're not student loan debt, because that's a good issue for Democrats. If we're talking about those three things, Donald Trump is going to win the presidency.
Okay. But what about if we're talking about democracy?
Threats to democracy, if we're talking about student loan debt relief, if we're talking about a vision for the future that's
women's rights,
united, if we're talking about abortion rights, if we're talking about these
those are
things,
winning issues.
We're not going to get to those things with Joe Biden as the nominee.
Yeah.
It will not happen. It cannot happen.
Because his age
of
is
that
front and
debate.
center.
Of course.
Or his debate
So we can
performance.
sit here and be academic and say it's unfair to Joe Biden and nobody knows how people age and it's all. I get that. I totally understand that.
But nobody cares.
But we're not talking about. See, you and I are talking about two different questions.
But most people don't care.
It's not that they don't care.
It's a look test, right? It's a sniff test. They look at him and they go, he looks older, he looks weaker, he looks more feeble,
That
he looks
debate
like he's missed a
confirmed everybody's fears about Joe Biden. And it's not the right
Everybody's
saying
stereotype. It confirmed the narrative that Trump's been putting out about all of his opponents. Don't you agree? He said Hillary Clinton was slipping and was senile when she slipped one time, literally.
Right.
Maybe.
And what happened? She came to the debate. She kicked his ass 3 times.
Sure.
And we all moved on.
Let me
right?
ask you this.
Until we didn't.
What should Biden do? Obviously, you're going to say for the good of the country, for the good of the party, for the good of democracy, he should step down. But we know that political animals are so egotistical.
Okay, do you know why
What should he do?
Do you know why George Washington stepped down?
No.
He was afraid that if he died in office, the presidency would be viewed as like a lifetime appointment.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. And he knew he was slipping. You know, he fell off a horse. I believe it was in 1793.
Yeah.
So a year after he was reelected, like 10 months after he fell off a horse, hurt his back, recovered. He was okay, but he knew he was slower. He felt slower.
He did a good thing. He did a good thing for democracy.
Right.
He was our first president. We haven't seen many people do a good thing since, right?
I understand the draw and the allure of power. No, we've seen people step down.
Wilson lied. Wilson kept it all quiet and let his wife, I understand, right, run his presidency for a little while.
Yeah, but I don't know if it was Wilson's team or...
Wilson's team wanted to...
You also have to remember, in 1919, there was a difference in presidential succession in terms of how all that would work out and everything.
And difference in terms of the number of times you could be a president. But Roosevelt himself had problems with health that everybody could clearly see. You know he shouldn't have run a fourth time. I mean, he died while in office.
And that's not true. You're saying everybody could see it. No, you couldn't. Most people didn't even know Roosevelt was handicapped.
They could see that he absolutely couldn't walk by that time, and he was so infirm.
Most Americans...
Doctors, even his own doctor said, man, you're not going to make it a year, let alone the next 4 years.
Yes, he ran knowing. I mean, he was terminally ill.
And Reagan, there were questions about him as well. Look, he made some gaffes. He made a gaffe so bad. Remember that debate where he really did a zinger with Mondale? Where he said, I think you probably remember the quote, right? If my opponent...
people forget that was the first question of the debate.
And what did he say? What did he say?
It was Bob Truitt of the Baltimore Sun.
Right, and he was asking a question of Reagan and Mondale. Mondale then was about 56 years old. Reagan was pushing 70.
Yeah.
And what did he say?
And the reason that question was first was because Reagan got waxed in the first debate.
Yeah.
And he was still probably going to win going away. But, these things can become a race and an issue really, really quickly. So he and his staff prepared for that question. They got ready for that question. They got the question right off the bat.
Say the question again. What was the question? It was just a question of age, right?
Yeah, they said, Mr. President, you are already the oldest president. There are reports that you were very tired after your most recent encounter with Mr. Mondale. Is there any doubt in your mind, any doubt at all, that you could, actually they said President Kennedy had to go for days on end with very little sleep during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Is there any doubt in your mind that you could function under such a situation? And the response was, none at all, Mr. Truitt. And I will not make age an issue in this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
And everybody laughed. Reagan laughed. Even Mondale laughed. Mr. Truitt laughed. The audience laughed. And
why do we remember that debate
Because he went on to win by a landslide, 49 of 50 states, right?
But we remember it because it totally flipped the narrative that had been developing that the president had lost the step.
But do you know that during the end of that very debate, when they were doing their closing arguments, Ronald Reagan went off on a tangent. He literally went off the rails and started talking about driving down Highway 1 with Nancy. And he was just off the rails talking about nothing related to the race. And Truitt had to interrupt him and cut him off.
Oh, yeah.
And no one remembers that. We remember that zinger he flung. By the way, Dwight D. Eisenhower, I was thinking about this. He weighed the pros and cons of running for a second term himself. One factor that concerned him was his own age.
Sure.
Look, either he and or his family or his aides were talking about his age then. Look, it seems like every president, for one reason or another, has to at some point think about their age, whether they're too young, whether they're too old. At any rate, arguing against re-election in his own mind, he wrote in his diary in November of 1954, there's a need for younger men in positions of the highest responsibility, quote, at a time of growing severity and complexity of problems that rest upon the president. Nelson, he was 64 years of age.
Well, I would add
today, the two leading candidates, admittedly, are old as, the oldest clocks, 77 and 81. I don't even know if clocks can measure you that old anymore. I don't even know if they can measure that old, but they're old.
Metaphor?
They're old, and they've been old. Now, I want to know, on the other side of the break, you were sort of giving us a sneak preview of your thoughts about replacing him with someone. You said, look, I don't know if Joe Biden can win or not, but what I do know is there's a candidate out there that can give us a better shot at winning.
100%.
All right, number one, I want to know why. How do you know there's somebody out there that can give us a better shot, first of all?
Well, there's a number of reasons.
Or what makes you think that? Yeah.
Okay, so first of all, and this isn't anecdotal, this is, mathematical and scientific. Polling indicates right now that Vice President Harris is about 2 or 3 points ahead of
which
the
for
president.
most polls is still, though, within the margin of error, right? But still.
And President Biden, if you look at a poll of polls, is down about 4, 5, or 6 points. At this point,
a little outside the margin of error.
At this point in the 2020 race, today, Joe Biden was 9 points clear of Donald Trump.
Sure.
That is anywhere between a 12 to 16, 17 point swing in President Trump's favor. Okay.
Now, I hate to throw a monkey wrench in this, but I got to throw this out there because I need you to address it. Some of our listeners are savvy. They're kind of hobby historians themselves. What would you say if they said, listen, in the last 100 years, how many presidents have lost re-election?
How many presidents have lost re-election? So 3 recently.
But there's been about 5 total. And guess how many of them were Democrat?
1.
Jimmy Carter. So what would you say to people that say, look...
I would call that a hot hand fallacy.
Yeah, but we've been worried about this for a long time.
Right. I would call that a hot hand fallacy.
But you said polls don't lie, and you said polls are pretty good indicators to make your own point. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, but this isn't a poll. You're looking at historical trend lines and assuming what happened before will happen again. It's a hot hand fallacy.
Aren't you doing the same thing by saying, look, at this time, last time around, he had a 9-point lead, so he needs a 9-point lead this time to win?
No, I didn't say he needed a
need
9-point lead. What I'm saying is that the trend lines since he took office have moved heavily away from Joe Biden. Okay.
But Kamala Harris is doing a little bit better in what little bit of polling we have. And I know we're trying to get some more polling out right now with both Harris, Newsom, and maybe even Cory Booker and others. Nelson, I'm assuming that you think Harris, I'm assuming you think or believe or support her candidacy.
I don't think it matters. Look, I think you have...
Well, of course it matters. You got to have...
It doesn't matter.
You can't just pick anybody and stick them on the ticket,
The problem
right?
with Joe Biden is an implacable one, and that is that people believe he is too old.
That's one of the problems. That's one of the problems.
The people who saw the debate saw the debate.
But that's one of the problems.
No, it's the problem.
That is one of the problems.
It's the biggest problem in his candidacy.
I heard you mention the border. I heard you mention the border. We can make anything we want a problem. Trump is really good at doing that. Listen,
wait,
if we
hold on.
get
I'm
rid
going to
of,
pull up CNN right now
and see what's number one. Okay,
I'm
number
just
one's
looking
his
to see where do we get the border story. Oh, wait, there are no border stories. It's
well,
all
not
about,
right now because we've made it easy for the Republicans. We're not talking about policy. We're talking about his age.
You're never going to get the policy. You're never going to change the topic
unless you change the age.
Unless you change the candidate.
But I'm asking you, change the candidate, you change the age, okay? Kamala Harris is in her 50s. That is true. She's 58 years old.
Is she? I thought she was 61.
She's 58.
All right,
so
good
here's
for her. Nice young woman. Sounds good to me.
By the way, 61 would still be a young woman. But here's the thing.
20 years on the president. 23 years
hey, look,
on the president.
It doesn't age everybody. Huh? It didn't age Trump. Of course, he didn't do anything while in office except go to the links and
eat and yell at people.
Hit the ball with that shanky swing of his that he claims he wins club tournaments with.
Look, I want the same thing you want.
No. I want to stay with this thought, though. Harris is basically given Biden's blessing. Mm-hmm. She hasn't, by the way, yet, but let's say she's given the blessing. Let's say the Democratic caucus says, yep, let's go with it. Now, she still has the number one problem, number two, number three. She doesn't have the old number one problem, but she's now inherits the number 2, 3, and 4 problem.
Which is?
Why? Well, I don't know the exact numbers, but I do know that she was Biden's right-hand man woman. So she's going to be given she's just like Biden moniker. Number two.
She's going to be asked a lot of questions about whether or not she was hiding the president's health.
Oh, my God. And then she's also going to be given questions about the border. And she's going to be given questions about law and order in San Francisco, particularly a couple of summers ago when there were the Mike Brown and Philando Castile riots that were going on.
You are trying to focus.
No, I'm trying to focus on what the issue will be. If we get rid of I do, because I want Donald Trump to be defeated. I don't want to just get rid of Biden just because he's old.
Me neither.
I'm saying if we get rid of Biden, we got to replace him with a candidate that stands a really good chance of winning, that won't have to be sitting there constantly and talking about and continuing to apologize for Biden. Kamala Harris is going to inherit that. She's also a woman, And we've shown time and time again that we're not ready or that we're too damn misogynistic to vote for a woman.
That is so not true.
You say that.
In any other country, we would have already elected our first female president.
But we're not another country. We're Americans.
Okay, but
we don't vote for women.
3 million more people voting for a woman than a man shows that we can do that, and we are ready to do that.
Yeah, but I mean, come on. If California was the only state in the United States, we would already have a Democratic president and Congress.
Any Democrat will be saddled with the issues of the Democratic Party, of the border, and all that.
But it's not the Democratic Party that's going to get these people elected.
Do you think,
by your own admission, who's going to get them elected? Are these somehow weird swing voters, these moderates that are out there on the fence?
Do you think Joe Biden has a record to run on?
No, yeah.
Okay,
he has a record to run on.
Why can't Kamala Harris run on that record?
I'm saying
they have a message for the American people.
I don't know why she can't.
They have a message for the American people that will never get out. It will be drowned out every day.
We should let young people who have made bad decisions about going to college when they should have just become a plumber or a carpenter, give them their money.
That's not the Democratic message for the American people.
No, that's the Republican message. That's their criticism.
But that will be their criticism no matter what. So don't focus on what your opponent will say. Focus on how you can control the narrative.
You know who Donald Trump and his ilk are absolutely terrified of?
Anybody else but Joe Biden being the nominee?
They're terrified of Gavin Newsom. He's slick. He comes straight out of Central Casting. The guy doesn't make any gaffes. He's beautiful. He's polished.
You sound like you're looking for Trump's VP pick.
I mean, I don't know.
Give me a break.
Hey, look, you said yourself, people vote based upon the way they see things, the way it feels. Look, I'm all for substance. I'm all for it. But as you've mentioned, and unfortunately, swing voters, moderates, whoever they are, I don't actually believe they're moderates. I think they're just Republicans. Like some of our late night show hosts have said, I think not Stephen Colbert, but maybe John Oliver said, moderates are just really Republicans who want to get laid. So they're just trying to pretend like they have some tolerance, some compassion, when really they secretly are just Republicans. Get me straight here. Gavin Newsom, it's believed, would absolutely slaughter Trump because he has a better command of everything that Trump claims he's good at. And I think Gavin Newsom's even better at golf.
I disagree.
But Kamala Harris, I'm worried. I'm worried. I love her. I think she'd be wonderful. I think we need a woman to be president.
Gavin Newsom would have to answer for all of California's problems, and there are plenty of problems in California.
Yeah, including what? If it were its own country, a 5th or 6th largest economy on the earth, that's a real problem.
That's just because more people live there.
We got a lot of people that live in India that they don't have a GDP like.
That was true in like 1992, and it has nothing to do with Gavin Newsom. I mean, it's just the economy of California.
So now you're going to tell me Gavin Newsom's a terrible governor?
I didn't say he was terrible.
He doesn't have to answer
He's
very
fine.
much.
I'm just saying.
What you're pointing out is, and what I'm pointing out is, Democrats need to fall in fucking love. And Republicans just fall in line. It is so true.
That is so not true.
When is the last time you got like your balls tingled over a Democratic candidate?
Oh, never.
Exactly. You don't have to go any further. You don't have to ever go any further.
I loved.
You don't have to go any further.
I love Barack Obama. I was a big supporter of him. I was excited by his candidacy.
Have you ever talked to a real MAGA type supporter of Trump? Have you actually ever heard?
Sure, all the time.
Heard that passion, that fire, that tingle in the voice of people who support him?
Sure.
I have.
Yeah.
I mean, I guarantee you Trump supporters go to bed at night and fantasize about him. My point is,
a vote's a vote.
Yeah, but man, it's just so much easier if you are Trump.
A lot of Democrats go to bed fantasizing about Trump too, but they don't want to tingle his balls or get ball tingles.
But my point is,
they want to kill him see him in a car accident.
My point is, we want to argue, we want to quibble, we intellectualize, we make it sound like, oh, iron sharpens iron or whatever. You know, the pressure makes diamonds, and if we just get candidates and put them through gauntlets.
Dude, you are complicating what is very, very, very simple.
Easy, right? Get rid of the old stiff man, replace him with a angry black woman, because you know that's the way it's going to play with Trump.
Yeah,
Trump's going to give her a label.
So what?
Gave Biden Sleepy Joe. Gave Bush. Gave Bush the.
Who cares what Donald Trump
apparently
says?
The moderate voters,
Democrats,
the swing voters, apparently all these agnostics out there. These political agnostics out there. Apparently all of them.
Listen. Everybody thinks that Joe Biden is too old to be president of the United States. Everybody.
And they're just wrong.
Everybody.
They're just wrong.
I don't care if they're right. I don't care if they're wrong. You're missing the point. You're never going to get to the other issues.
He's not too old to be president. People are too ageist and too stereotypical and too short attention span and too weak when it comes to making their own decisions.
You know what? This conversation has taken like an hour. Are you going to be able to spend that much time with every voter? I mean, we have an audience, a reach of about 200 people. Maybe all of them were in the tank.
It is possible we're just getting what we want. It is possible that Mike Judge, the guys who created Beavis and Butthead, were right. They were prescient. That movie, right? Idiocracy.
As the 21st century began, human evolution was at a turning point. Natural selection, the process by which the strongest, the smartest, the fastest reproduced in greater numbers than the rest, a process which had once favored the noblest traits of man, now began to favor different traits. Most science fiction of the day predicted a future that was more civilized and more intelligent. But as time went on, things seemed to be heading in the opposite direction, a dumbing down. How did this happen? Evolution does not necessarily reward intelligence. With no natural predators to thin the herd, it began to simply reward those who reproduced the most and left the intelligent to become an endangered species.
Never saw it.
Oh, my God. I can't believe you're sitting here having a conversation with me about the very thing that's coming to fruition. People think 1984, right, by Aldous Huxley was prescient. No, Mike Judd's movie Idiocracy was prescient. It was so outlandish. It was such a caricature of the worst type of American you could ever find. Now multiply that by millions, because this guy was frozen. It was like Owen Wilson or somebody, right? Somebody that already looks dumb. He was frozen in time. He wakes up, and it's like 1,000 years later.
I just want to be clear for our listeners. 84 was George Orwell.
George Orwell, Huxley, Brave New World. Yeah.
Brave New World. I did
thing.
love Brave New World.
Yeah, both of them are similar, though. They're similar ideas, right? Fine pieces of literature. But what I'm saying is, Mike Judd, a fine literary himself, who created Beavis and Butthead and Idiocracy, 20 years ago, does this film. It's Owen Wilson or someone like that. He's frozen. He's like part of a military experiment. He's frozen. He's supposed to be an average guy.
Okay.
Right? They freeze him, and they're going to wake him up 100, 500, 1,000 years later. He wakes up, and literally everybody, from the scientists to the doctors to everyone, are hundreds of times dumber than he is.
Okay.
And he already thinks he's dumb. Right? And so we look at it, we laugh. It's just a satirical, outrageous sort of look. It's like yesteryear's Black Mirror, right? Netflix Black Mirror show.
Okay.
And everybody's like, oh, it's funny, but God, thank God we're not going to ever devolve or become that stupid. Maybe we're here. Maybe we're here. And I can't believe that we are. I can't believe that we're actually having a conversation about whether or not moderates, swing voters, these fake, hackneyed political agnostics, if they really even exist. Again, I'm with John Oliver. I believe that they're probably just Republicans in sheep's clothing.
Look,
just so they can pass during the morning, the afternoon hours. Listen,
you're so off base.
No,
Listen,
I'm not off base.
You're not even thinking right about moderate voters. You're thinking moderate voters are just infrequent voters.
Oh, yeah, they're just infrequent.
No, people.
They certainly aren't informed and don't care about democracy.
Come on, they care about democracy.
How could they if they were willing to vote for Trump over Biden?
They just don't go to bed every night with this stuff. They get their information from TikTok or social media.
Yeah, they get their information from 2 seconds of looking to see who looks healthier. Which, by the way, objectively, Biden is healthier than Trump. I've said this to you before.
That. You're missing
Trump's
the point.
overweight and doesn't exercise. He eats fast food every day.
So what? You're making an argument that is important. You right now are the problem. You are wasting time.
God, I'm the
you
problem.
are wasting time. You are losing valuable time.
You and your ilk have made the
point.
bad thing worse.
No,
As Michael
that is
Steele,
not
the
true.
former RNC chairman, said on MSNBC a couple days ago.
No, you're right. It's me. It's me. I'm the problem because...
You just said it was me. I'm the problem.
It is because you're ignoring what is factually true, and that is that people think he's too old.
Have that argument off camera. Have that argument with the aides and with the camera.
Yes, that's right, because nobody saw that debate. except the 50 million people who watched it and the 150 million people who saw clips of it on social media. You're so right. If we just stop talking about it, it goes away.
Oh, and if we replace Donald Trump with Kamala Harris, and if we replace Joe Biden with Kamala Harris, it goes away as well. No, you still have a big orange.
It does go away.
No,
it does go away.
You still have moderates that are going to say the border, law and order.
So what? They can have that argument. We're talking about the age issue.
The only reason Biden is going to lose is because of the age issue.
Yep. Because he'll never get on to another one.
I disagree.
Never. He will never get on. And I didn't say he was going to lose. He could still win. That's not the question either. The question is what gives us the best chance? And the answer to that question is anybody except Joe Biden.
And I disagree. I would have to be convinced. I'd have to see polling. I'd have to see research that says a black woman who was his VP, who, by the way, has mysteriously been missing in action until recently when they started trotting her out to places like Greensboro with a big smile on her face. She's come alive lately. By the way, I like her, but it's clear what's happening. She's out there now as a desperation move. She's got to try to, on the one hand, make it look like she supports Biden, but on the other hand, she needs to start talking pretty and fast.
Let me give you some data points. Let me give you some data points.
Love to hear that.
Okay. You say that a black woman can't be president, even though we've elected
a woman can't be president.
Even though we've elected a black man.
Sure.
And even though
we are more misogynistic than we are racist. We are
vote.
more misogynistic than we are racist.
A woman has won the national popular vote.
Doesn't matter. We're more racist than we are more misogynistic than we are racist, perhaps.
I don't disagree that it is. I mean, clearly it's harder for a woman to break through just because of our gender biases.
Does she have enough time to break through?
Of course. In fact, I think there's a huge benefit to having somebody like a Kamala Harris, like a Gretchen Whitmer, like a Gavin Newsom, where Trump doesn't have 4 months to define that person.
He doesn't need it. This guy's a meme machine.
But he doesn't have a whole lot of time.
He's a meme machine.
So what?
He can look, he's got like Tourette syndrome or something, right? But the bad type, whatever that is. He can just look at somebody and immediately wrap them up with one comment.
And
right?
everybody understands that. And people don't.
Weak Marco Rubio, whatever we call him.
People don't pay it any mind. What they do pay a lot of mind to is what they see with their own lying eyes, I guess.
The ones we're trying to get on our side somehow.
It's not about moderates.
Agree or disagree. Agree or disagree. Likely voters for Trump, Republican registered voters, are they going to vote for Trump or anybody else under any circumstance?
No.
So it's going to be Trump. So he's got a baked in what, 33, 40%?
I mean, 45.
Okay, 45.
Probably.
He's got a baked in 45. Joe Biden.
Yep.
Those people that are Democrats for life, they're entrenched, they've drank the Kool-Aid to hear the Republicans say it. Any other candidate going to get their vote if they have an R beside their name?
No, probably
So Joe
not.
Biden's got a baked in what, 40%, 45%?
40.
45%?
40.
Well, then that's our problem right away, that we're on the losing side.
No, you're right. You're so right. That is our problem, is that we are not loyal, that we just don't have fealty to a party, to an idea.
Well,
The problem is having a conversation about
45% of Americans, you're saying, are so stupid, they would rather have a criminal, a sexual assaulter, a 6-time...
I didn't say they were stupid. I'm not characterizing them. I'm not characterizing them. I don't think they're stupid people. I disagree entirely.
How can you justify 34 felonies? How could you ever vote for someone
I can't justify
who
that.
rapes
I'm
women and
not
assaults
voting
women?
for him.
How could you justify it for people who would?
Because they're
basically saying, I believe a criminal is better than someone who's senile.
No, they're not. They think the system is corrupt. They don't accept your premise. They don't believe Donald Trump is a criminal, and that's how they view it.
They don't believe he's a fascist.
No, they don't.
And they don't believe he's going to become a
fine.
dictator, even though he told him he would be, at least for one day of an office.
Is telling a stupid person that they're stupid.
It won't matter. You've already said there's nothing you can do to stop them from voting for him.
I didn't say that.
You just did. I said, is there anybody else they would vote for?
True Trump supporters, like people who have like the flags and stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
I asked how many. You said it's 45% of them are doing that.
I think 35%.
Okay.
Are
that was the question I asked. That's a very different story.
No, it's not. It's the same story. If you let me finish, I'll explain why it's the same story. 35% probably, maybe 33%-ish. These are,
hardcore
feelings. Okay, got it. And then
they like Trump would invite Viktor Orban to the party before they would invite Justin Trudeau or any of the.
Call another 12% absolutely hate the Democratic Party, think Democrats are horrible, but also think Trump is horrible and would never vote.
Oh, the double haters.
The double haters, and they're going to vote for President Trump because they hate Democrats more than President Trump.
And we
got
the same thing going on the other side, right? What I want to know is how many voters really are in the middle and available.
Not very many, but you're missing the point. The point is...
That seems like the point.
The reason the electorate changes every so often is because of who shows up. It's not like minds are changing. There are a few swing voters, and the media treats them like friggin' Socrates or these enlightened people.
And I'm just
not.
arguing
I
they're
disagree.
not.
They're
Yeah,
not. I totally agree.
What
they're
Mike
not.
Judd called idiots.
No, I don't think they're idiots. They're just low information voters. That's fine. Not everybody.
But you'd have to be
loves
under a
politics.
rock, like you said, to not see Joe Biden ambling
You're
around barely.
making my
You'd have
point
to be
for me.
You'd also have to be
You're-
under a rock not to see
so
that
if you're a
Trump
low-
is a criminal and a grifter.
So if you're a low information voter, what's easier to see?
I just don't believe you could be that low information not to know that Trump is a criminal.
You're wrong. The idea, and this is what I'm talking about. You have to get your
So
supporters,
low information
your people to the
voters,
polls.
low information voters are honest brokers, but they can't see that Joe Biden is a good person. But they can see that Donald Trump is secretly a good person.
No,
What?
No, it's not what I said. You're just creating the straw man. What I am saying is that none of that matters. People will look at Joe Biden's performance, all the TikTok stuff, all of it. All of it.
I don't know what old people watch
conclude-
TikTok. Only people who watch TikTok are like 18-year-olds, and they don't vote anyway, Nelson. You know
and
this.
They do.
They
And
do not.
And they will conclude that they have
Did you
a
just
person.
say young people vote?
You
know they don't.
They don't vote.
They're the lowest.
Okay, they still vote.
Yeah, but there's very few of them.
It's
They're not
not
going to change
very
this
few.
election.
It's not 10%. It's not 8%. It's probably like 40% of 18-year-olds.
18 to 24-year-olds, I
didn't-
don't believe you're even close. But we can check those numbers. But that is neither here nor there. Old people are going to find their way to the poll, and they're going to vote for Joe Biden. Hopefully this time around, as we saw last time around, suburban moms, hopefully college-educated men will come out strong for Joe Biden. Look, if you, ladies and gentlemen, can't come out strong for Joe Biden or whoever is the Democratic nominee or whoever somehow becomes the Republican nominee besides Donald Trump, can't come out this time for something as big as democracy, then you know what?
Yes,
you might as well never come out because you might not have another chance. Man, do you know where Joe Biden was the last couple of days? Who he was hanging out with?
I don't really.
World leaders across
in
the
NATO.
world,
Yeah,
right?
great.
NATO
That's
world leaders,
wonderful.
great
That's
people, right?
wonderful. Yep.
Knew their
Very-
names,
very
shook their
impressive.
hands, had long conversations with them, man. I bet he had late night talks with them. Okay. You know where Donald Trump was?
I don't care. You're missing.
No, I'm asking you.
I don't.
But there's plenty
He's
of people
playing
who do
golf.
care.
He
No,
was
no, no.
playing golf.
No,
He
no,
went
no.
to Miami.
He was
He gave a
hanging out
stupid-
down at Doral at his clubhouse.
Yeah, I
and you know
saw
who
him. I
he
saw
was?
his-
Who was
his-
hanging
his
out
rally.
with? You know who he was hanging out with down there?
Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance.
Another member of
Doug
NATO.
Okay.
Viktor Orban.
Okay.
Hungary's
great. That's wonderful.
fascist president.
That's wonderful. And Orban loves him. That's great. I get it. I'm not.
Is
you're-
Orban a
Who are you
fascist?
trying to convince?
No, you're saying that people who vote for Trump, people who are in bed with Trump, people who are basically, completely drank the Kool-Aid are smart people. They're not dumb. Okay, then they're reckless. They're dangerous.
I just
Putin, Orban, these guys are dictators. The stakes, as you know,
they're
are
high.
too great.
They're high, and that's why we have to have a conversation about the best way to win.
And if we spend
And we
too much of our
need-
time talking about Biden's age, we may or may not get him
That is
out.
so foolish. Listen, we are not the problem. That we are having this conversation
No,
is
Donald
not
Trump
the
is the
problem.
problem. Donald Trump is the problem. He's the threat.
Okay, and
we need to be
the
spending
president's
time talking about
age is
substance.
his best weapon. The president's age is his best weapon. We're
Which
not
is why
going
Hillary
to get
Clinton
to
lost. Which
substance.
is why Hillary Clinton lost.
The problem is not going away.
She was so
the
old,
problem
she
is
lost.
not going away. It will not go away. It's not like us or people in the media or
I
God
agree
Save
with you. The
America
problem
people
isn't going away.
talking
I
about
agree.
the president's age is hurting him. That's
I
not going to hurt
agree.
him.
Problem's not going away. But
So-
I just disagree that age is the only main problem.
It is.
Because
It
I'm going to
is.
argue, my best argument would be Hillary Clinton lost the presidency to Donald Trump.
Okay.
And she was younger than Joe Biden.
That doesn't matter.
I
She
know.
was a uniquely flawed candidate. She's
There's
been in
something
public
special
life
about my mysterious, magical belief about how politics work. But yours, Jason, you're off the rails. When you talk about polling, it's not real. When I talk about it, it's a trend. Nelson, you're just using
Hillary
words.
Clinton-
Hillary Clinton, yes or no, was younger than Donald Trump.
So what?
Because you're making the case that
Age
the only
wasn't
thing
the
that matters
issue
is age.
there.
Yeah. So 4 years ago, age doesn't matter, or 8 years ago, it doesn't matter. 4 years later, or 8 years
She
later,
was
it
the
does matter.
Secretary of State. She was a United
Who
States
cares?
Senator. She was the First Lady for 8 years.
Oh.
She was probably the most well-known
Joe
woman
Biden.
in the friggin' world. And some people like her, and
And one
some
of the
people
only
hate her.
Democratic candidates that had bigger chops and bona fides and experiences than Hillary Clinton would have been Joe Biden. And yet somehow he parlayed his experience into whipping Donald Trump's
The
ass.
word Clinton, the name Clinton inflames passions on both sides.
She's a
for
woman.
better or
She's
for
a woman.
worse.
Say
That's
it.
not why she's
a
lost.
woman.
She's a woman.
She lost also because she got blamed, victim shamed, gaslighted about her husband, who, by the way, was a randy son of a... Oh, my God. Republican operatives were playing that card hard. You stayed with Bill Clinton knowing he was a womanizer, knowing he was possibly raping women. What do you mean, so what?
That didn't hurt her. Okay. That didn't hurt her. What hurt her was people thought she was corrupt. Crooked Hillary. Crooked Hillary. That's what hurt her. The email
thought
thing,
she was
that's what
corrupt hurt her, but knowing someone's corrupt doesn't hurt him. Donald Trump is an enigma, ladies and gentlemen. This is unprecedented, I will say. There's a double standard.
There is a double
and it's
standard.
a very strange double standard. It's not like the double standards that I've ever been privy to. You know, when in my house sometimes, my daughter will say, it's not fair. It's not fair that Oliver got a large ice cream yesterday and I didn't. And I have to say,
that
well,
is
yes,
true.
It's not always fair, baby. But yesterday, if you remember, you were at a friend's house at a swimming party, and you guys had pizza, and you had ices. And she said, so? That was my friend. And I'll say, yeah, but it was still fair. And she would go, no, it's not fair. We have different standards, Daddy. I'm like, you're confusing equity and equality. You don't need a larger ice cream on the same day you already have an icy and a pool party and pizza and you're with your friends. Your brother, who wasn't invited, who would love to have come, is at home with me, sitting here. And I decided to take him to McDonald's and get him a large ice cream. That's the kind of double standard I'm used to thinking about. But in this day and age, in this crazy, politically divisive, again, Mike Judge universe of idiocy, we find ourselves. There is a man who has told you he wants to get out of all of our alliances with all other nations. He doesn't want to give a dime to Ukraine because he said that'll be the quickest way to end the war, because without our support, Russia will roll over them. And he said he doesn't care. Go ahead. He's also admitted that when he does stuff that everybody can see as immoral, that's just him being smarter than the rest.
Right.
He's also admitted...
I get it.
He also...
I understand that it's frustrating.
Has admitted to touching women without their consent.
He's civilly
not just
convicted
uncivil.
of sexual assault.
Oh, I was going to say, he's not just uncivil.
Not
Quit using the
uncivil.
word civil. He's a fucking criminal.
He's civilly
He's a
convicted.
disgusting, misogynistic criminal who is
do you wanna
dangerous
win
to our
or do you
democracy.
wanna argue?
No, I want to win, but here's the thing.
Here's how you're gonna...
No, neither me nor you or anyone close to Joe Biden. He even said it the other day with George Stephanopoulos, right?
Maybe...
If you can be convinced that you cannot defeat Donald Trump, will you stand down?
With the friends of, and if the Lord Almighty comes out and tells me that, I might do that.
It was a high-stakes interview, but at the end of it, well, an awful lot of questions still remaining. Is this...
Had a little debate last week. Can't say it was my best performance. But ever since then, there's been a lot of speculation. What's Joe going to do? Is he going to stay in the race? Is he going to drop out? What's he going to do? Well, here's my answer. I am running and going to win again. And my critics say, sure, but he did all that. But that was in the past. What about now? Well, how about the 200,000 jobs we announced yesterday? So let me ask you, what do you think? You think I'm too old to restore Roe v. Wade, the law of the land? You think I'm too old to ban assault weapons again? To protect Social Security and Medicare? To get child care, elder care for working families who need the nation? To make billionaires finally start to pay something beyond 8.2% of the tax rate? Let me ask you, you think I'm too old to beat Donald Trump?
Right?
Maybe
nobody,
Joe Biden,
including unless the Lord Almighty comes down, he goes, and he ain't coming. Which, by the way, I don't even know why he said it's a he, because it could be a she. But here's the thing:
pray to God.
Pray to God that Joe Biden gets a brain tumor, and it convinces him that God's telling him
Wouldn't
to
it
step
be a
down.
fitting end to American democracy if we ended up losing it in part because one man's thirst for power after he obtained it?
Are you talking about Trump right now?
No, I'm talking about President Biden.
Oh, Trump doesn't have a thirst for power.
One man's narcissism, one man's ego blinded him to the reality that most Americans believe he is too old for the job.
Talking about
and cannot
Garland.
win.
Oh, I was going to say, because
Wouldn't
talking
that-
about Nancy
would-
Pelosi.
wouldn't that
the
be-
fact that you're blaming
wouldn't
Joe
that
Biden,
be ironic?
the fact that you're blaming
Wouldn't that be
this
ironic?
moment in history on Joe Biden.
You just said Biden's the only one who can make the decision, and it's a
No,
decision
he is,
that has
but
to
I
be
can't
made.
blame him. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as you know, died while a Supreme Court justice. She could have done us a solid, gotten out, and let us get someone to replace
So
her.
why?
Also,
Okay, so wait.
No,
How
my
can
point.
you be mad about Ruth not leaving, but
No,
say
I'm not.
Biden needs to stay in?
I'm not. I'm not saying I'm mad about it. I'm not even saying Biden needs to stay in. I'm just saying I don't know.
Look, Justice
Short of
Ginsburg
God
let
coming
us
down.
down.
Yeah,
She let us down. And Biden's doing the same thing.
Tell that to women who are raped and have to carry their children that she just let them down. She did more than let them down, right? Tell that to your own daughters.
Yeah,
My
she
own
did
daughter.
more than let him down.
She
You're right.
did way more than let him down.
And Biden's making the same mistake, dude.
No, he should be. Yeah, I mean, the
He's
mistake he
making the
made is he
same
didn't stack. He
mistake.
didn't pack the court. He should have done that.
No,
in fact,
that
now
would be
that
a
he's got
horrible
this
decision.
immunity, he should just go ahead and make it illegal for somebody with a felony to run for office. Look, I want to.
Well, he can't pass law.
I want to close
on his own
by saying that I don't think you and I disagree fundamentally. We both want democracy to continue, even in its currently flawed, imperfect form.
Yes.
I
And we
don't
want
think
Donald
we
Trump
disagree.
to lose the presidency.
I don't think we disagree that Donald Trump is not a good, kind, caring human being. He does not have political bona fides. He does not have anybody else's sort of best interest in mind, not even his own family members.
I agree.
This
I
guy
agree.
demands loyalty, fealty from everyone, but never gives any in return.
We already put him on the
Joe
couch.
Biden is a wonderful human being, a very good man, albeit uneven. His aides say some days he's on, some days he's a little slower. I want to say that wisdom, experience, being a compassionate, self-reflective, good human being that can recognize character, that can recognize people that can help you make better decisions, has got to count for something. It's got to count for something. Now, on the one hand, I want Joe Biden to whip Donald Trump's ass. On the other hand, I know the political reality is that Joe Biden has lost too many supporters, specifically people who have a mouthpiece and who have a camera and who can come into our homes every night, like these 16 or 17 now congressmen and women who've come out against Joe Biden. I know
and by
that
the
it's
way,
a losing battle now. I know it's
while
over.
we were recording,
Yeah.
Hakeem Jeffries said at his meeting last night with the
Yeah.
president, he did not endorse the president.
Yeah. So
That's
I realize
the leader of the House.
He's lost his support inside. And yes, he is doing himself, democracy, his constituency a disservice if he stays in despite. Now, here's what I think he should and could do in order to maybe save a little face, be able to stay in until his presidency is over, but potentially turn it over to someone else. He needs to come out and address the nation. What do you think about this idea? Come out and address the nation. Talk about this shining city on the hill that Reagan and others have talked about. Give all the feels. And I mean fucking nail it. Just like he did the last two State of the Union addresses. Like I know he can do. Come out and talk about family. Talk about Beau. Talk about his love of family. Right? Look, clear-eyed, as clear as he can with his fucking cataracts, and stare into the camera, which shouldn't be hard to do since he freezes consistently, right? We all know that. Don't blink. That shouldn't be hard either because the guy's an automaton most of the time. And just say, you know what? I've been in politics for a very long time. I've fought as hard as I could. And I'm going to continue fighting. But it's clear after my very shaky performance the other night. Admittedly,
but it's been a shaky couple of weeks, too.
That performance, as you've already said, that's enough. You don't have to go through all the other stuff because that was little compared to the big moment, right? Just say, you know, you're sorry that you didn't sort of uphold the standard. You didn't pass the smell test that night. However, you're going to do everything you can to fight like hell the rest of the way. But because democracy is bigger than me, and because this is why I've done all this to begin with, and because I respect my voters, unlike Donald Trump, I'm going to release my delegates.
Well, I think he should do that.
And let's go to the convention, and I'm going to bust ass, and I'm going to beat all of the Republican. I'm going to beat Donald Trump and all of the Democratic candidates that come my way. And we're going to let iron sharpen iron.
Oh.
However, if for some weird reason, the delegates at that convention decide that there's somebody else that can give them a better chance to beat Donald Trump, I will happily move to the side and pledge my entire support in what little bit of life I got here left on this earth, and I'll get behind them. Be it Kamala, be it Gavin Newsom, be it fucking Ted Cruz. I will get behind them.
I don't like it.
Why not?
I would prefer that the president come out.
Oh, and grovel
talk
and go, I've got Alzheimer's, I'm senile.
No. I would prefer him to come out and talk honestly and frankly with the American people, as I know he can do.
But he doesn't believe he has Alzheimer's. He doesn't know if he's senile.
Alzheimer's.
What do you say?
I'm not talking about Alzheimer's. Here's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Have him come out and talk about aging. Just talk about aging. We've all been through it. We're all, if we are lucky.
Well, yeah, he can talk about that while he's releasing his delegates and saying, let's go to the convention.
We are all going to go through it.
Yeah, he can talk about that.
We've had parents go through it.
He can say that. He can talk about that while he releases his delegates.
I would like him to talk about how difficult the presidency is when it comes to aging and how he knows.
I don't want to hand Kamala Harris the ticket.
I have no problem if he releases
But if he
his
releases
delegates,
them and lets us fight towards the convention, Gavin Newsom,
I don't want him in as a
Kamala
candidate.
Harris, that's fine.
I don't want the
because you
president
think
as a
that
candidate.
it's possible he'll get the most delegates.
Of course,
again.
the delegates have been selected
But
by
if
Biden.
they're released, if he says to them clear-eyed and honestly, I give you the right, you have free will, you can pick who you want.
No.
I mean, you would assume that all the people like Hakeem Jeffries and Chuck Schumer and all these others would also be loyal to Trump. I mean, to Biden. But they haven't been. They've come out. They're picking country over person.
Yeah.
Right? They're picking country over party.
Nobody should
so
be
his
loyal
delegates
to
wouldn't be either.
a candidate.
Why do you think his delegates would be if he honestly came out and released them? I'm just saying it's a better deal. It's a better deal than what we have right now. Because what we have right now, again, political purgatory. Uncertainty,
we
and every single minute, every single hour, every single day, we are talking amongst ourselves about something that clearly is not as big a threat as that goon on the other side of the aisle who is getting a free pass each and every day to go gallivant around with his fucking fascist buddies and work on his stupid hokey golf swing.
That's exactly what you are going to get every minute of every day for the next 4 months
until
Joe
he does
Biden is on the top of the ticket.
Until he does something, yeah.
So then you agree with me. It is time for the president to do the honorable, patriotic thing and step aside.
I don't know. I do think that right now I would have to be convinced that he cannot beat Donald Trump.
Well, wait, are you at least convinced that if he stays in, the entire race is about his age and his ability?
100%. And Donald Trump's going to make it even more so if he stays in.
Do you know what the next 4 days in Milwaukee are going to look like?
Yeah.
It is going to be an ageist bashing.
That's true.
It is going to be
100% true.
Walkers are going to be out there as props.
And I've got to believe that there's enough good humans left in our society that would vote for a cheeseburger, again, without cheese over Donald Trump at the end of the day. Just like there's enough terrible people that will vote for a proto-fascist, would-be dictator, liar, cheat,
Jason, he won,
sexual assaulter,
he won,
and
as you
felon.
have pointed out, he won in 2016. If you don't think that the liabilities of President Biden, with the economy being what it is, with inflation being what it has been, prices are high, et cetera, and then you add age on top of that, if you don't think his liabilities are much greater than President Clinton's, are much greater than Kamala Harris's, I don't know what to tell you.
I just wonder why it's taken so damn long for surrogates, for people in Congress to go out and help prosecute this case against Donald Trump and help make the case that Joe Biden has been good and would continue to be good for democracy. the stock market has doubled in the past handful of years.
Well, that's not really a Democratic statement because most Americans aren't involved in the stock market. Come on.
But most
looking at the Dow.
But many Americans who vote Democratic are. I mean, teachers are. You and I both are. We're all in it, even with our retirements.
Okay, so you think I'm concerned about the North Carolina pension fund and how it's doing on the market?
Doesn't matter whether you are or not, but you're too young. You're naive, right?
Oh, I'm not naive.
The reason
Come
the
on.
old rich people care about it is because that's what they do day to
This
day.
is
You
what
and I don't
happened.
have time to do
Look,
that.
James Carville always said.
I don't want to get into a debate about that. That's neither here nor there. That's just one of the things that the surrogates could talk about, right? They could also talk about the fact that we did cut COVID, right? Donald Trump was talking about putting light bulbs up people's asses and drinking bleach. Joe Biden hurried treatments and medications. He got on the airwaves and steadied America and pledged a better, more expedient response. You got to admit that. Joe Biden has been on the public.
Matter. None of that matters.
Oh my God,
Elections
I can't
are
believe-
not about what you did for me in the last 4 years.
No, I'm
It's
saying
about a
while it
vision.
was happening, they should have come out and supported democracy
They've
and the
done
president.
that.
They've
done
barely
that.
done it. I've seen
this
Gavin
is a
Newsom not once or
campaign
twice.
that is being let
Now,
down
all
by
of
the
a sudden-
candidate.
Now, all
period,
of a sudden,
full stop.
people with political ambitions want to come out really strong and articulate their support for democracy and make a case against Trump. Gavin Newsom could have done more of that. Kamala Harris, she's the vice
He's
president.
done a bunch of it.
Not enough. Not enough. I haven't seen him.
I cannot believe we are here. You are blaming other Democrats. This is a Joe Biden
And you're blaming
problem.
Joe Biden for being
Joe
81 and
Biden.
stiff.
Yes, I know. I'm blaming him for not
And
being
that's
realistic
crazy.
about what he can do and what he can't do. Because he hasn't shown me. He has been the most sheltered president in my lifetime. He does fewer news conferences, fewer interviews.
So he needs to perform more. What if I
Yes.
said you do less hours at work? That makes you an ineffectual instructor.
That's not
That's
the
silly.
same thing.
Being in
It is
front of a
not the
camera
same
is not
thing.
proof that you're a good president.
No, but when we see you and you look like you did, it feeds a narrative.
Yes.
And it is fair to ask, are you okay?
So I want a person that looks slightly more alive, albeit way less healthy in terms of weight and things like that, like Donald Trump, to come on 4 times as much and just spew hate and drivel and
That's
lies
not
and
what
misinformation.
we said. Look, this is the question
I don't
of this
care
campaign
about
now.
how many
This is
times
what
he's
it is.
been on the air.
And you're going to vote for him, and that's great, and I totally understand that, and I
you're
appreciate it.
probably not. That's okay,
No, I
too.
didn't say that. I did not
I'm
say
not going to
that.
vote for Trump, but I also can't vote for Biden.
I didn't
okay,
say that.
fine.
I never said that. I will vote for the
And
Democratic
all these
nominee.
people coming out
I will vote
verbally, publicly, and saying I can't I can't support Joe Biden anymore. Good on you.
Who said
Good on
that?
you.
Who said they can't support him anymore?
Hakeem Jeffries,
Nobody
Chuck Schumer,
said
and
that.
many,
Nobody
many
said
others
that.
have said he needs to
No.
step away. That's the same thing.
No, it is not.
Saying that,
No, it
that
is not.
you need
So
to step
because
away.
he's gotta-
I'm not going to have
Because
support
he's
anymore.
that's not true.
And so you're doing as much, if not
You just
more,
said you might want him to step away and release his delegates.
under the right kind of.
So
no,
that's
that would be stepping away. That would just be saying, okay, bring it.
okay.
That'd be saying that he would be saying, bring it, not step away. I said, say
Bring
that you
it
release
on.
your
Bring it on.
bring it on. Release the delegates. Come to the
Look,
convention.
you are
come at me,
You
bro.
are overcomplicating what
that's
is
what we do.
is really really simple.
Social scientists do overcomplicate things.
Well, political scientists don't.
But we don't want to stereotype. We don't want to get things completely wrong. And then when we're wrong, we go, oh, really what we meant was this. The way political scientists do. All the polls 4 years ago or so said Donald Trump was going to lose to Hillary Clinton.
You understand,
Everybody
don't
was
you, that
moving
polls
Hillary
are not
Clinton.
predictive. You understand that. We want them to be
what
predictive.
What are you basing your information on? I
Wait.
don't know that you're an empirical scientist. You used polls, except you call them trends.
No, if somebody says that Joe Biden
Is too
has a
old.
40% chance of winning.
Okay.
That means 4 out of 10 times he would win.
Sure.
A 40%
I
chance
understand what
doesn't
probability
mean
is.
exactly. So what are we talking about? You're acting like polls are predictive. I'm not saying they're predictive, and I'm not trying to give you information that I don't have. What I am telling you.
No, but you said you're sure that he's not going to win, but anybody
I'm not sure
else
he's not going to
could
win.
Okay,
I
then you're going
didn't
back
say,
on a
and
little
I didn't
bit.
say that. No,
I'll
I did
leave
not.
that part in then.
Yeah, leave that in because that's
I
not what I
will.
said. I said I guarantee you he is not the best option.
That somebody else has a better. You didn't
That's
say
what I
just
said.
somebody. You said anybody else has a better shot.
I have a better shot. You have a better shot.
No way. You don't have the name recognition. You don't have the money behind
Any
you.
realistic,
You don't have the vision. You don't have the experience.
Any realistic option is a better one.
And
at this
you
point.
and I wouldn't be any better than Trump at actually calling up world leaders and remembering or even knowing what their names are. Like, Trump can barely even point to Canada on a map,
Stop
let alone
arguing about Donald Trump being
I want to argue about Donald
he's
Trump
an idiot.
because he's the greatest threat to democracy, not Joe Biden or his age.
Joe
you
Biden,
heard it here
Joe
first,
Biden
folks.
ignoring this
Joe
problem
Biden,
is the greatest threat right
Joe
now.
Biden's age or people who are ageist and stereotypical
keep
voting.
whistling past the graveyard, buddy.
That's
Just
fine.
go to the pond and throw some bread for the ducks and go.
So what do you do if Joe Biden steps away, Kamala Harris runs and gets beaten in a landslide election not seen since Ronald Reagan whipped Mondale?
She won't. And Joe Biden won't lose like that. But states that shouldn't be in play are in play. Virginia in play. I've even heard rumors about New York being in play.
All because Joe Biden stutters, gets stressed, stops, and is 81.
Oh, I get it. Yeah, it's not fair. Right. I understand that. Nobody said it's fair. It is what it is. This is the reality I would like to live in because it's, real, and I would like to deal with real problems instead of saying it's not right. I get it. It's not fair.
And honestly,
fair.
I'm saying that maybe we've just taken democracy to the furthest point that it can come to, right?
Yeah, we arrived at the moon.
Maybe we have.
All right,
as
maybe.
Mike Judge suggested in the
Maybe.
movie Idiocracy. I haven't seen anything like that since the movie Idiocracy. Maybe we've gotten to that point. Is democracy over if Donald Trump becomes the president? We'll save that question and this conversation for a later podcast. Nelson, always a pleasure shouting
Always a
back and forth
pleasure.
with you.
Always a pleasure.
I hope our listeners gain some insight, some perspective from this. I'm not sure if anything we said made sense, but what I am certain of is that you know how great the stakes are. Whether you love him or hate him, whether you believe he should stay in office or step down, whether you are riding with Biden or giving up on him and deciding on another, you care about democracy. And listen, that's really all we can ask. When you go to that booth this November and you get ready to pull that metaphorical lever or press that button, or bubble that sheet, be asking yourself, please be asking yourself, do I believe democracy is better than autocracy? I'll talk to you next time. Nelson, it's been a pleasure.
Later, man.
Middle class people give everybody a shot. Just a straight shot. Everybody gets a fair chance. Number one. Number two, remember all this talk about how I don't have the black support? Come on, give me a break. Come with me. Watch. I'm getting so frustrated by the elites. Now, I'm not talking about you guys, but about the elites in the party who they know so much more. But if any of these guys don't think I should run against me, go ahead, announce for president. Challenge me at the convention. On Europe, the polls are wrong in France. They're also right. There's no right wave or tide here in America either. By the way, in case you're wondering whether there is one, have you ever seen Trump run away so fast from what he's for? You know he's going to do it anyway, but he's such a liar. This guy everybody knows what they're planning to do. And now he's saying, no. This guy is going to rip away at a woman's right to choose in a permanent way. This guy is going to make sure that he exacts revenge. This guy's going to destroy democracy. This guy's going to give a blank check to the Supreme Court and going to use its past, the 2025 agenda. This guy's extremely dangerous.